Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our REEP Huddle, where we have a very casual conversation on a specific topic. And today we're going to talk about our in-house management. Whew. Lots to talk about there. So I'd like to introduce who I have with me. I've got Jason Martinez. And Jason's REEP Residential's interim president. And Jason, just talk a little bit about yourself and your background and career in this business.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity for me to come out here and talk a little bit more about the residential operation side. Jason Martinez, interim president of the REEP residential team. Been in business in the industry for 20 plus years. I've worn a lot of different hats over the years, mostly in operations. Did a little bit of stint in acquisitions, asset management, and construction management. The good thing is all those are underneath one umbrella here at REEP, which makes life a little bit easier when you're controlling the property and then also implementing the business plan. But yeah, very honored to be here and excited to talk more about residential side and what we actually do and how we work in tandem with equity, asset management, and obviously operations where I'm at.
Absolutely. So Jason tends to take the high road when introducing himself. But he was actually with one company for 17 years.
Yeah.
A national firm. And how many units did they have at one point? We were there?
With that specific company, we started off with nothing more than, when I was there, 7,500 units, and we grew to over 35, almost 40,000 units, and we made the top list of the National Multi-Housing Conference year in, year out when I was there. The previous company that was at prior to REEP, this is a great segue for what the conversation is. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We had 50,000 units that we owned and didn't necessarily manage in-house. Two completely different environments altogether. I've seen both sides of the fence, more or less, and I'm honored to be here. We're at REEP and actively growing.
Well, thank you, Jason. And what Jason was saying there is he's been involved with, I believe, owner operators.
Correct.
And that's most of but you've also spent a lot of time on just fee-based management groups.
That is correct.
So he's got to have a nice different perspective. And if you guys recall early on, we went third party just briefly, and I think 14 and 15, 2 years. Harley and I do have experience with that as well. So third party management. So, okay. As you heard earlier, this is being recorded. We have a lot of people signed up for this, and I'm not sure how many people have jumped on. We may have some, of course, with Valentine's Day. I think may have some people who jumping on a little later or have a chance to watch this. So we'll make sure that happens. So a little bit about REEP. We started in 2012. So some of you who are joining us for the first time. And we have properties in Texas. And Jason, why don't you tell us just a little bit about our current portfolio?
Yeah, current portfolio, we have in 3 markets, specifically Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. 23 properties, a little shy of 5,000 units across those 3 markets. Houston and San Antonio are split pretty evenly. Austin, we had our first acquisition there last year, and that's going up I-35 corridor. So we have a very good footprint, sizable footprint here in Texas. And I would always say I'm a little partial, a little biased. We're in the right place at the right time when you compare to where the rest of the market is and the way other states and other regions are doing it. So we could be in a better spot than we are right now.
Absolutely. And I think our previous huddles, we talked about the specific markets that we're in. And fortunately, as Jason said, we're in a great area where continue to have job growth, population growth, income growth, and very business friendly policy. So I think I'm on track with everything here. Vanessa, can you pull up the that wheel and share it with everybody? Because I think this is a really good place to start. Because when you look at basically the anatomy of what happens to a property, the life cycle, if you would, of a property, or an investment property in this specific case we're talking about, it's this wheel here. And we always talk about, we buy it and we do a bunch of our due diligence on it and get the loan and raise the money. And then step 3, we manage it. That's what we're going to focus on today. And then we end up doing a disposition on it. And at a real high level, being the fact that we are owner, have our own in-house management company, there we go, and we don't third party for anyone. That step 3, problem, it really goes to step 1 and step 2. You guys are totally involved. So I'll just ask you, Jason, to open up on that a little bit and give some overview on this one.
Yeah, I'd love to give a little insight on this. I mean, even though that we are on this graph, only one step out of the 4, I love the fact that we're actually, the residential side is involved from day 1, and we're involved throughout the entire life cycle of the ownership period. So when I say that, the communication is key throughout the entire process, and it's key to a successful business plan. So when Jacob, when you say that we're involved from day 1, the minute, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been a part of this as well. But the minute you guys get the go ahead and the acceptance of the LOI, letter of intent, that we've been awarded a deal, that's when the wheels start working on the residential side. Because Jacob, the equity team and the acquisition team is going to rely on our expertise, our in-house management, our experience in helping out to get this deal across the finish line. When you say you're doing the due diligence, we have boots on the ground from day 1 once we get access to the actual investment opportunity, where the residential team is walking every single unit of every single property in advance of closing the deal, so that, for lack of a better word, we know where all the bodies are buried before we actually take the property over. We want to know where everything's at, if there are any outstanding issues or anything that might not have been addressed or seen on the previous analysis that the equity team is doing. All that to say, we work in tandem up until day 1 of ownership and takeover, where we're fine-tuning the budget between equity and the residential side, so that we know on day 1, when we do take the deal over, we fully vetted the process. We've done our own due diligence on our side. We've walked the units. We scrubbed the rent roll. We've done everything on our side. So we feel confident on day 1 of takeover. We have a business plan in place with a budget that with realistic expectations that we know we can achieve, because to implement the business plan to be successful at it, we have to actually inherit that and make sure that we hit all those numbers. At the end of the day, it's all about the returns to the investors. And as long as we're hitting those metrics, it should be a successful platform. You fast forward 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, whatever that ownership period is, we also help and assist with the equity side on the actual transition and actual disposition of the property. We've seen it firsthand where, especially in the environment we're at right now, operations is critical and key to the success, because to get a deal across the finish line, you have to have it a well-seasoned rent roll and a well-performing property.
You're talking about a disposition.
On a disposition, yes.
On a sale.
On a disposition sale.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about still the LOI stage and the operations part and the day 1 difference.
Yeah.
I think the big key here is the alignment that we have.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, when we get a property under contract or the LOI stage, we bring our management team early on. You mentioned something, we know where the bodies are buried. That's because of our scale now in Houston and San Antonio, and even in Austin. We have actually a lot of our current staff members who may have worked on that property, or they were a regional and it was in their umbrella. And we can determine a lot of checks and balances, if you would, that our equity team simply is just not there. And I'll say that, at least from the buy side, we've always had, even from other buy groups, their management company always vets this too.
Correct.
It's the same parallel track. Where I think the difference REEP comes into play is we're literally in the same building. We have the same lunches. We're on different floors, but we are truly, and we are truly serving one client, and that's you, the investor, under REEP. So there's just a lot of connection, if you would, that we have. And you do this time and time again, and we don't buy everything. So some of them we don't buy, but we seem to have a lot of what the right hand is doing and the left hand is doing. And there's just, let's talk about how that, even from an operations standpoint, we've got an equity team that listens to you and and the respect that they have, because I think we know you have to own it and help us and operate it you guys operate it. Let's talk a little bit about how that alignment has helped you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I
and your
mean,
teams.
going back to communication is key. We're actively involved all the way throughout the entire process. We're always fine tuning the budget. We're always fine tuning the business plan to make sure that we're getting at least the best success and the most efficient process that we can throughout the entire process. No business plan is ever perfect. And when I say that, if and when an issue does arise, and they will arise on any property, any investment, good or bad, you make sure that you address it. And then we are always working in tandem. I do love the fact that we have a very sizable presence in all three of the markets that we're currently in. To take it a step further, we have a lot of knowledge based off the individual that we have that work there. I call it boots on the ground, where they know the intricacies of each one of those markets and digging down a little bit further to the sub markets and all the comps that are in and around the investments that we do have. So we utilize that experience, that knowledge, and obviously we work hand in hand with the equity side, acquisition side, to make sure that, you know, everything is going in a perfect world according to plan. But if something does come up, we're all on the same page and singing from that same sheet of music in terms of making sure that it's set up for success.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I want to get across in this huddle is we're talking about what happens operationally, and that based on the revenue and the expenses side, minus taxes, insurance. So let's talk about the revenue side, because I know we've made a lot of gains on the revenue management and how that's at a high level. I know there's been a lot of changes lately with some of the new supply coming on. I think that's hurt the A class a lot more. We don't have any of that. But let's talk about how you kind of manage that revenue on the ops side, and how much information you actually provide, because you're the one, you're renting them, and you know our comps better than anybody. Your teams do.
Yeah, it's our job to know what's going on in every single market. That's anyone that knows me knows that I'm a data guy. I love numbers. At the end of the day, the numbers will tell a story, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but it's what you do with that data in making sure you're making a confident decision and the right decision at the end of the day. Going back to the revenue management, the platform, for the longest time, the multifamily industry was a dinosaur. Just generally speaking, in terms of accepting new technologies and implementing them across the spectrum. To the industry's credit, they've done a much better job in the last 5-10 years to really kind of, hone that and try to really fine tune it. And that's one thing that we're doing in-house in terms of revenue management, which we're very proud of. So essentially, we have access to a wealth of information and different databases that provide information on not just our own subject properties, we have all that in-house, but all the comps and what they're doing in terms of their occupancy, their rents, their trends, and other metrics that we take into consideration. At the end of the day, it's really all about supply and demand. If I just boil it down, you could have a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, or a 3-bedroom unit at any of our properties. If we see the supply is coming or the demand is higher in a specific floor plan, guess what? We're going to raise those rents. Not just blindly, but based off the information, the knowledge that we have coming in on a daily and weekly basis. So we're actually making changes to the rent on a weekly basis based off what the market is telling us. And you bring up a great
at a floor plan level.
At a floor plan
level. That's
the
difference we've seen in the last 4 or 5 months.
Right. Not just the 1-bedrooms, not just the 2-bedroom, 3-bedrooms, but you might have 4 or 5 different 1-bedroom floor types. And we just know based off supply and demand what the market is telling us and what it's not telling us on how we can make adjustments, minor adjustments here or there on a weekly basis. At the end of the day, a $10 difference up or down might not sound like a lot, but when you throw a cap rate on that and you put an actual valuation on that, just to ensure that that unit type is actually occupied, then you're actually adding value to the property on a weekly basis. Now, you take that the caveat or the opposite of that, if a unit's vacant, it's not generating any revenue. I can't do anything with that. I really can't as an operator. My job is to get as fully occupied as possible at the highest premium on the rent basis on a floor plan by floor plan basis. Another thing to take into consideration, our portfolio the 23 properties, for the most part, B-class workforce housing, where we're going to add a value add component to it. You bring up a great point, and a lot of other management companies will say, okay, if I'm in this spectrum, why would I even care about what the A-class is doing or what's coming online? There's still a lot of development out there within the market right now. We do need to pay attention to that. Yes, our renter profile and tenant profile might not qualify or try to rent at a high class, A-class, but there's so much product coming on that these new developments, we're going to have to start giving concessions to get them leased up. So that price compression is coming down. So we always have to have a keen eye on what they're doing upstairs, even though we might not compete with them directly. That way we can actually make smarter decisions in advance of what's coming up offline and when it's.
So we're talking about downward pressure.
Correct. From
Okay.
the Class A, Class A properties that we might not typically compete with, but we always have to take that into consideration and keep that in the back of our head as to what they're doing.
And let's talk about how this technology that we put together and we're able to deploy to our REEP portfolio. Last year, I just recently saw a couple of numbers on rent growth.
Yeah.
Or I believe it was the portfolio, and we can stay at that level, I believe. There was organic rent growth on new leases, and then there were renewals. What were those two numbers that you?
But one thing I'm very proud of is the fact that as a year over year ending in 2023, we were able to get rent growth across the entire portfolio of an 8% rent growth. That's more or less anywhere from $150 to $200, depending on the asset and the market and the sub-market where they're at. But 8% on new leases. That means when someone's moving into the unit, let's say they were $1,000. Fast forward, when a new lease comes out, we were able to increase that new lease by 8%. When others in the market, other property management companies, other states, other regions were either having rent growth that was stagnant, not increasing, or even decreasing, just to maintain that negative rent growth, to maintain that occupancy. Very proud of that fact. And I think, I think that's also attributed to the fact that we are in 3 great markets in the entire region. But, we'll take a little credit to that and what we've implemented here at REEP Residential.
Yeah, no, I think we really had to peel back the onion on that. We had some real discoveries, and I know some properties didn't experience that, but it was a different market, and it was a big question mark on a few things. But until you went down to that level, that's where times are. Things are much more expensive. Rents are harder. We have to earn every rent increase, and we have to earn every bit of it. And your properties have to be in better condition than they've ever been in. Let's talk a little bit about fraud. For those of you who may not follow this closely, there have been there's been an increase, if you would, on applicants faking documents. Is that kind of it? And everything else that they do. And it's been, it's everywhere. And so tell the audience a little bit how what we put in place to help mitigate that, because the last thing you want to do is bring in someone who from the get-go has no intentions to pay, because they're going to milk the system, and we'll eventually get them out, but they're a beating until that happens.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Jacob. I mean, it's one of those things where I wish some of these applicants, and unfortunately sometimes these tenants, will put more time into getting jobs and doing what they're supposed to be doing so they can pay rent on a timely basis. One of the things that we've seen, we're not immune to it by any stretch of the imagination, but it's an issue that you're seeing across the entire multifamily industry. When it comes to fraud, individuals, there's websites online where someone can go out there, put their information in, and essentially they can create fake documents. When you qualify to move into our unit here in our portfolio or any other apartment complex in the country, for that matter, you have to qualify. Our qualifications are you make 3 times the rent in terms of income, no criminal background, et cetera, et cetera. But those are the big 2. But essentially what these individuals are doing are they're going out there, creating fraudulent documents, and then trying to go to lease a unit and presenting these documents as their income statement and or pay stubs. We have implemented here at REEP a couple of various applications to catch us on the front end. And I've seen some of these fraudulent documents, and I'll be the first one. They're very good. They are very, very good and at what they're doing. But what we do is beat them to the punch, and actually we catch them on the front end. If for whatever reason The applications that we implemented show a red flag that it's possibly a fraudulent document. We ask for supporting documents to verify they who they are and they're making what they're making. If they can't pass a sniff test, we ask just to go on to another place. Without mentioning any names, you know, sometimes we have the logos implemented at our leasing offices, and I've seen and heard of potential applicants coming in. As soon as they see that logo for the some of the applications we have in place, they don't even bother.
Okay.
And take it a step further.
Wow.
Before we implemented this, you know, I'll be the first to admit, you know, these applications, when an individual we get in, you hit the nail on the head there, Jacob. These tenants, whether from an applicant to a tenant, they have no intentions to pay, and they will milk the system and kick the can down the road without paying any rent. You know, it's great to say that you're 95% occupied, but if you're 95% occupied and you have a handful of individuals that are not paying rent, what's the point of that? You're living there for free. We're providing a roof over your head, and it's next to impossible to kick you out. With that being said, we have other strict processes in place. So if someone does, you know, make it through the system, you know, on day 30, you know, we're following the eviction, going through the entire process and kicking them out in a timely fashion. There was a backlog for the in the court systems across the entire country, and a lot of these people knew it, and so they would just milk the system. And I've seen it. Thank goodness we haven't experienced it here at REEP, but other states, other regions, other jurisdictions, I've seen it where tenants would kick the can down the road for 6 to 9 months. In some cases, I've heard of a year without paying rent. Not in this state, but in other parts. And when you have someone living rent free for a year, that just from operations perspective, it's very hard to come back from it.
Right. Okay. You've touched on a couple of things with regards to delinquency. You mentioned, yeah, it's never good for them to move in without without intentionally paying the rent. And we've addressed that by not letting them in to begin with, but we're certainly doing our best, and we're staying in front of the game. We don't rest. So that we know they're busy at work working on the new fraud system. So, but let's talk a little bit about delinquency, because as I mentioned earlier, everything is more expensive.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of pain happening out there, and it has for rent compression for us as well. But nonetheless, we believe people will put food on their table and pay their rent, but we have to stay on them. And tell me some of the changes that we've made that help us collect the rent. And I believe we've done a really good job with that. So
yeah, and so anyone that knows me, I beat the drum. There's 3 metrics. I call it OCD: occupancy, collections, delinquency. When I go out there on site, I talk to our regionals. OCD. What's your 3 metrics? At the end of the day, I'll just give you high level metrics, but I'll come back to delinquency.
Yeah.
Occupancy. We want to be above 93% occupied, pre-leased at 95. On collections, we want to always at the end of the month, 95% or better in terms of total collections, total operating income, which includes rent plus other income, 95% of budget or better. Third one, delinquency, less than 5% delinquency at the end of the month. And so think about it like this: if we have to collect $1 million in rent starting on the 1st of every single month, by the end of it, we want to have 95% of that in-house, or excuse me, less than 5% of that delinquent. So with things that we've done to implement that, another product that we use here that's actually partnered with our property management software system. They actually have artificial intelligence. And it's crazy what it's gotten to now. And so obviously at the operations level, our assistant managers are the ones that are in charge of doing the collections and in charge of the delinquency. So they're the ones knocking on the doors. Rent's due on the 1st through the 4th. It's late on the 5th. And at that point in time, that's when we go on the 5th day of every single month. You know, we're going a mile a minute to make sure we're collecting every single dollar that is owed to us in rent, and to make sure it's paid before the end of the month. In some cases, it can't be done. So what we've implemented is we have another product that actually will split a rent payment for a tenant, provided they
Mhm.
qualify,
Mhm.
into two separate payments, one on the first, one's on the 15th.
Mhm.
The tenant is responsible to pay them, but this application that we use pays us on the first of the month.
Okay.
So we get rent on the first automatically, and it makes it a little bit easier on the tenant for them to swallow that rent payment bill because it splits it into two. Taking delinquency a step further, we
And they
have,
take the risk on that.
correct, we do not.
We do not.
We do not,
Okay.
REEP, the organization or the residential side. It's another third-party system that's used or application where the tenant qualifies with them. And we get the payment on the first, and the bank, our director of accounting loves that system because it's more, the more money he has on the front end on the first, the
Mhm.
easier it is for us to make decisions operationally in terms of payables, et cetera, et cetera. Another feature that we've implemented within the last, recently the last year, is artificial intelligence. So we are sending this data out, and whether the tenant owes $1,000 in rent on the 5th day of the month, or they only owe $100, whatever that number is, it's calling these tenants. We call it touch points, either voicemail, text message, or in person. So it's reaching out to them to making sure that they are actively trying to pay their full amount of their delinquent payment, whatever that amount is, over the course of the month. Obviously, on the 5th day, it's not as an aggressive call, but as the month progresses, it's, hey, tenant in 101, how are you going to pay this? When are you going to pay it, et cetera, et cetera. And the numbers are mind-boggling. It's crazy how this does work, because I've seen our delinquency number come down to less than 5% across the portfolio, specifically 3% in Houston, and I think a little shy than 5% in 3% in San Antonio, 5% in Houston, and another 3.2% in Austin.
Mhm.
And that is good. I've heard and seen numbers out there throughout the country in excess of 10% delinquent at the end of the month.
Mhm.
That's rent that's not being paid, and people are
Mhm.
essentially living there for free. So we're trying to do everything we can to collect all the rent and all the income that is owed to us before the end of the month.
Good. Let's divert here just a bit before we get back with the questions. Let's see if I can have Rebecca, if you can type in the chat box there, something with regards to getting on the investor network. I think that was a message we wanted to communicate to everyone. Maybe she has already. Okay, and let's go ahead and Vanessa, let's go to full screen. That way we can bring this graphic up here in a little bit. Okay, there we go. All right, I think maybe you stopped sharing that graphic a while back, so thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the site employees. When we started this company 11 years ago, I really felt like the operations, the site teams were almost second fiddle, and that's not true with all the owners out there. I think if you have your own management company, they're a little closer to you because they're part of your company, and I think that's one of the reasons that attracts a lot of people to REEP, who own their own in-house management, for the reasons we discussed earlier. But when you really start to bring your teams together, you realize that not only are these people responsible for driving your business plan, these people will work
Yes.
very hard, and they are really committed, and they're very smart individuals that want to learn more. And when they're communicated to, they'll perform their job much better.
Yeah.
So let's just talk a little bit about the staff on site, maybe some of the maintenance teams. Let's just open that up if you could, please.
Yeah, I love our teams across the board. I always make it a point, it's great to be here in the office, but I actually prefer being out there on site at the properties, interacting with the teams. But you hit the nail on the head again there, Jacob. You get the buy-in from the team members day one, because they feel like they're included. They're obviously included. We communicate with them as much as we can about the business plan throughout the entire process, but they have the buy-in, and I love it because once they get the buy-in, they're actually suggesting things that we might not have been able to see out there on site. And just the fact that they're actually, you know, I love when you and Arlene go out there and they're actually interacting with the ownership groups. That doesn't happen other places. I know firsthand that it doesn't. Not to say that's not right or wrong, but I see that the buy-in here and the commitment that you have here is something that's hard to replicate. People say it, but it's a lot harder to actually do and implement the way that we have here. So the team is committed. The teams are often, you know, they want to show you that they want to do well, but at the same time they want to, you know, make their own suggestions, which we have implemented across some of our properties because they see things that we can't see, and the fact that they get to interact with obviously residential side, equity side, ownership side, asset management. That is something that is not being done in other locations. I think that's one of our competitive advantages that we have here is the team that we do have, and the fact to your point that they are committed.
Yeah, and I've also noticed that the teams are very competitive in a very friendly way, but until the, you know, up until the numbers come in on a monthly basis and Jason sends out a basic scorecard and we'll have winners in very different categories. Let's talk a little bit about that, how that's helped change our environment, but also how it's helped people say, well, how'd you do that? You've been number one three months in a row. And I talk about the sharing of the data that we have.
Yeah, that's been one of my biggest initiatives is we call it the WAR report, the weekly automated report. It essentially has all the 15 to 20 main KPIs, key performance indicators that we use to judge a property on whatever those metrics are. But so what we're doing is anyone that knows me is they know I'm a very competitive person. I would create since we've introduced a competition on a monthly basis, whatever that metric might be, occupancy, collections, delinquency, new leases, whatever it might be. And the fun thing is you start to see this momentum week over week. We give weekly updates on what we call our REEP wrap, which happens every Friday. And all 23 properties are on, and all 23 properties are saying, you know, we're doing this, we're doing that. But the cool thing is we've gotten to the point now where our Houston portfolio is almost the exact same size as our San Antonio portfolio. So now we're creating another level of competition, Houston versus San Antonio. And that's taken a whole nother level that I didn't foresee happening until we kind of started implementing this. But to your point, once the month is done, let's just use occupancy as an easy metric. Not every manager is going to be good at every single thing. And so they get to see what they're good at, what their strengths are, but also what their weaknesses are. And the great thing about the environment we have here at REEP is everyone is willing to help everyone out. And so at the end of the day, we always ask those top 3 or top 5 winners for every single month, what did you do to exceed your goal? What did you do to make your property better in terms of this KPI? And they will tell everyone else. And at the end of the day, that competitive environment is making everyone else better because my strong suit might not be collections, but if I can learn from my other counterparts on what they've done, I can implement that at my property and I can start to improve on that specific metric. And I know I might need improvement on.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. And it certainly has made a difference for us. Let's talk a little bit about social media. You know, we've become and have been a society that we go online to look at a lot of things, and we leverage all the platforms that are out there. But one of the ones that's been around for a long time, and we have intentionally made some good strides, is the Google reviews. We all do that. Even to this day, it seems to be the one that sticks around. Tell us a little bit about the impact we've made. I think we've been doing this for.
It was June of 2023 that we implemented it, and now we're fully.
Yeah, so not even a year yet, but it's not that we were unintentional about Google reviews, but we've really gotten focused even more on it, implemented some new technology behind it. So tell us, we made some great gains. Tell us about a little bit about that, how that's worked out.
One thing I'm very proud of is the fact that, our reviews, whether it's Indeed or this, in this terms, Google.
And Indeed would be the employee reviews.
Correct.
Because we'll talk about that in just, yes, I'm glad you brought that up. And the other one is
Google. So
for residents.
for residents.
Right.
And so there's
And
60.
each property has a Google review. I'm sorry to jump in.
Oh, yeah. No worries. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that everybody's square here and aligned with what you're talking about.
So 23 properties,
Mhm.
every single property has its own Google review,
Mhm.
internally. It's out of a 5.0, but over the portfolio, we're 4.2 out of 5 for our portfolio
Wow.
from a Google perspective. When industry average, I believe, is 3.6 or 3.8. I forgot one of the two, but we're obviously doing better on a property by property basis and a portfolio basis as compared to the industry from a Google review rating. Now, what that means is these are tenants that go through the entire process. So whether it's on the application process, the move-in process, or I had a leaky toilet, or the move-out process.
So you're reaching out to them
Yes, all the
at all
time.
those top points and asking them what their experience was.
And
Wow.
so what we do is we have another product that we utilize here in house, that they make it a point to reach out via text message. I don't know where my phone's at, but
Okay.
as soon as that work order is done, we're reaching out to them. What's your experience? Out of 5 stars, would you give us 1? Would you give us 5, or anywhere in between? If it's 3 or 4 stars, once you got that touch point, the application that we use does a very, very good job of continuing that conversation, asking a question up to the point where they can actually give a review, good or bad, it doesn't matter. We want to, because I would love to have 100% 5 out of 5 reviews, but I know there might not be a reason for that a tenant did not have the best experience.
Okay.
I want to know what that is, because that allows an improvement on our side, whatever that might be, on the front end, while they're living there, or before they're moving out. But yeah, we do a very, very good job now since we made that transition of ingesting so much useful data and useful information regarding our ratings at a property level and within the industry and by market. And whether it's a leasing agent, a community director, or a make-ready maintenance tech that's fixing a work order, we know how we're doing across the board at our properties and with our not the residents, but the employees.
Wow. So, not only do we want prospects coming in our front door, we want the best prospects coming in our front door. And this is just another strategic decision that we've made to pay some focus, if you would, on these reviews and to ask them at these certain points. And Jason's right, we're not perfect. And when we have a chance to improve, we have to know about it, and we act on that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's really helped us as far as getting better prospects in, and that all runs down to better delinquency. Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and I was
Yeah.
going to say, I always try to put myself in the prospect's shoes.
Mhm.
If I'm going to go out there and look for a unit, or if I'm moving, the first thing I'm going to do is going to go online.
Mhm.
I'm going to go online, look at the market I'm trying to move to. I'll pick anywhere from 3 to 5 different apartment complexes, and I'm going to do my research. We already know when a prospect comes in, 99% of the time, they've done all the research they need to do in advance of stepping in. So when they step in the door, it's a matter of closing it, because they walked through the door because they chose our site or property for a reason. More than likely is because they saw a positive Google review online, in comparison to our counterparts that might be across the street who might not have the same experience. And so we know that's driving business and renters into our properties.
Okay, so we've got a couple more questions we're going to go through, then we'll open up the line here for questions. Actually, we have a couple more minutes. We're going to talk, and then we'll open up for questions. So, we do our best to bring in qualified prospects and to vet them and to help them get in our units. And one of the things that we also look at is we have to have inventory.
Yeah.
If we're going to bring in all these great residents, we need to have more than 1 or 2 units that are available. So let's, and that puts a little pressure on the maintenance guys to get these units ready. And you don't want to sacrifice quality, and that's a real nuance to have. But I know our move-in rate is really, really, really high. But Let's talk about or maybe our maintenance teams and how we're able to get them to perform at a level, because look, it's not always 70 degrees or
Yeah.
65, what it is right now, 50
Yeah.
out there and cool. It's rough out there. So tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, and I think that's another benefit and growth of having in-house
Mm,
management, because we don't outsource that. Typical turn time for any unit in a perfect world, if it's not a hard turn, is 3 to 5 days in our industry. Once we get access to the unit, we can have it turned in 3 days. But it's critical because, you know, you have to have that lead time to get that unit ready, because once, as an owner, as an operator, I know that I've got to start pre-leasing that unit out. If I know that tenant's gonna be moving out at the end of February, I'm gonna start leasing that out potentially for a March 1st move-in date.
mhm.
And so that way we have to know proactively what's coming down the road, and what we need to start making ready. So our maintenance teams are always constantly working to have those units ready. We have a 50% ratio that we have to try to achieve on all our vacant units. So what that means is we have 10 vacant units at a property at any point in time, we have to have 5 of those units ready to move in immediately tomorrow. If we can contain that 50% ratio, we always know we'll always have enough supply for any demand that comes up at any property in any market. But to that point, we reduce expenses by doing it in-house with our maintenance teams. And then we know there's going to be a big push starting in March, April, and May when schools are starting to let out for the summertime. That's going to be our big push. So we'll take that 50% ratio and probably increase it to 60 or 70%, knowing that's coming down the road. But what we'll also do is start utilizing our maintenance teams more effectively if we can take, and that's another benefit of doing everything in-house. If we need to move resources from one location temporarily to another property, we have the ability to do that for a short time, 1 day, 2 days, to get those units available. And so there's not too much of a burden on one specific maintenance team, because in the heat of the summer, when the AC units are going out and this is going out, there's so many work orders are going in. So we got to make sure that our maintenance teams are taken care of and they're not stretched too thin.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we ran out of time and didn't have a chance to go
Oh.
into how do you close the back door, but maybe that's another one we can talk about. And that perhaps is one of the most important metrics you look at.
Yeah.
A lot of things happen when somebody moves out and it's not good on your income statement.
100%.
So
I can have a whole nother podcast just on that alone.
probably separate on its own. Thanks, Jason. Okay, so let's open it up to some questions. And you can have the chat box to type in. And while we're doing that, I'll answer a couple of questions that came in from someone. And he wanted to know the specifics on REEP residential. Does it have who owns it? And we cover this in our webinars in full disclosure in our investor docs that REEP Residential is a wholly owned subsidiary of REEP Equity, and Arlene and I own REEP Equity. So it is an affiliated company. And I think most investors like that, but he asked the question, so I thought I'd address it again. We don't have any other investors involved with that. And is it profitable? I wish it was. We did it mainly to have better control over the income and expenses on our particular properties, and that's how we operate that entity. Then he talks about some of the expenses. They're all the expenses as per the operating agreements on our property are borne through the properties. I mean, each property has its own P&L and it's responsible for generating the income on that property and paying all the expenses on the property. So I hope that answers your question. And I believe those are the 3 or maybe 4. I answered 2 of them in one question. So okay, so I don't see any questions coming through. So with that, Jason, you want to add anything else?
No, I think this is my first time doing this, on the resident from this spectrum. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate it. The invite. I live and breathe operations on the residential side. It's an honor to be invited here. But yeah, at the end of the day, we love what we do. It's not the sexiest thing in the world in terms like when we have to roll our sleeves up and get a little dirty, but at the end of the day, this is what puts food on the table, and like we really thoroughly enjoy what we do on our side of the residential side.
Yeah, well, you've heard me say it. We can buy the best properties in the world and hand them over to a management company, and they'll either do a really great job with it or they won't. At the same token, we can buy a property with unrealistic expectations and hand them to the best management company in the world. And I go, I'm sorry, guys, I'm not sure what planet you came from, but there's no way we're going to hit these numbers. And I think we have a ton of alignment with that. And you mentioned earlier, I love how you run your operations and how everyone seems to have a real period of not only commitment but gratitude and grace. I mean, you just really run a really good group. And you mentioned our Indeed is a 4.6. That's extremely high. If you can look at some of the major groups that are out there, even in other industries, they're in their 3s or 3.5s or 3.8. So I think 4.6 is all truly off the chart.
That's all generated early by the own employees.
Absolutely,
that's the best part about it.
Absolutely, the employees go in there and type how they feel about REEP, and so we're working on we're just working to improve all of the experiences on the property, and I think we all know that a happy resident pays all the salaries, pays landscaping, and pays some dividends for us. So Jason, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on the REEP Huddle. And schedule a call if you haven't talked to Rebecca or a member of her team. It's the only way you're going to get deals from us. So if you're not getting opportunities that we're seeing, that call needs to happen. And until then, have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.